were talking to me about financial repression, what, 3-4 years ago. We're 8 years from the crisis, and we're still in financial repression. Why aren't central banks not normalizing?
Well, not normalizing because they're not hitting their policy targets. Central banks have said they want to have inflation at or around 2%. It's not the case in Japan. It's not the case for the ECB. And it's debatable whether that's the case for the US, so they need to keep going.
Right, but 8 years on, if what you're set out to do isn't working, do you change tack? Do you change your mandate? Do you abandon that mandate? Because it's not, again, why will it work this time around would be my question.
Well, there's no guarantee, and the chances are that it may not work. But we've said now for a while, actually it's been longer than 3 or 4 years that I've talked about financial repression, and what we've said is this is not a question of years, this is a question of a generation. Debt levels are still rising. Central banks are constantly changing their tack, actually. They're not, whatever was orthodoxy, 5 years ago, wasn't 4 years ago, wasn't 3 years ago. Remember forward guidance? None of that. They're experimenting, and they really don't know how to resolve this issue.
What does that mean for your returns? Where do you find value?
Very difficult. You've got to try to find risk premia which are not harvested for a number of reasons. Could be liquidity, could be volatility, could be duration. You've got to take some measure of risk. So we've said there's no value in bonds, certainly not sovereign bonds. So spread risk, as it increases, you can take some positions there. And then, of course, equities, we expect a 4% return annualized for the next few years. It's better than zero.
Fair.
Andreas, good morning. You're out of LSE and out of Leuven, which is, I consider to be the font of economic epistemology and theory. Is there a theory in European economics now, or are they literally making it up day by day as they go?
Well, I think it's not day by day as they go, but clearly there is a big clash of philosophy at the center of the Eurozone. You've got some of the northern European countries, obviously led by Germany, who believe very much in fiscal orthodoxy. It's sort of the theory that you need to live within your means. And then there is the rest of Europe, who of the Eurozone, and I would guess you can include the UK in that, who believe that the only way out of this current growth glut is fiscal expansion. And those two clash, and that's really a big issue. And I think that's why they're needing to make up things as they go along to a degree, because there is this fundamental philosophical disagreement at the heart of European policymaking.
I give you the highest marks for leading your research report with the phrase financial repression. It's a great unspoken that very few want to talk about right now. Does Allianz just assume a financial repression for years and years, if not decades?
That's been our working assumption for a number of years. We continue to be that that's the case. And what we mean with that, just to be clear, is that central banks will willingly be behind the curve as a way, and that's financial repression if you look at the 50s and 60s, as a way to reduce the real stock of debt. So that means, and we've seen it now pretty much announced by the Bank of Japan,
right?
I.e., we're going to increase interest rates more slowly than inflation picks up. That's the theory.